Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillahi wa kafa, wassalatu wassalamu ala man la nabiyya ba'da wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah, we are in the final pages of Surah Al Imran. Before beginning, let me start by apologizing. I'd forgotten the literature at the house. وَلِكُلِّ شَخْصٍ هَفْوَةٍ, and every individual has a slip. And I am not exempt from that, only the prophets and the angels. Now, I will begin from Ayah 174 of Surah Al Imran. We have 4 pages left. The Imam, rahimahullah, Ibn Al-Jawzi says, quote, "So when we are examining what Allah has said in this affair, we remember His words, فَانْقَلَبُوا بِنِعْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَضْلٍ لَمْ يَمْسَسْهُمْ سُوءٌ وَاتَّبِعُوا رِضْوَانَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ ذُو فَضْلٍ عَظِيمٍ إنما ذلكم الشيطان يخوف أولياءه فلا تخافوهم وخافون إن كنتم مؤمنين ولا يحزنك الذين يسارعون في الكفر إنهم لا يضروا الله شيئا يريد الله ألا يجعل لهم حظا في الآخرة ولهم عذاب عظيم إن الذين اشتروا الكفر بالإيمان لن يضروا الله شيئا ولهم عذاب أليم ولا يحسبن الذين كفروا أنما نملي لهم خير لأنفسهم إنما نملي لهم ليزدادوا إثما ولهم عذاب مهين ما كان الله ليضر المؤمنين على ما أنتم عليه حتى يميز الخبيث من الطيب وما كان الله ليطلعكم على الغيب ولكن الله يجتبي من رسله من يشاء فآمنوا بالله ورسله وإن تؤمنوا وتتقوا فلكم أجر عظيم ولا يحسبن الذين يبخلون بما آتاهم الله من فضله هو خير لهم بل هو شر لهم سيطوقون ما بخلوا به يوم القيامة ولله ميراث السماوات والأرض والله بما تعملون خبير. And so because they remained steadfast, these people came back with favor from Allah and His bounty. No evil touched them, and they kept following in the way of the pleasure of Allah and His favor. And indeed Allah is mighty and possessor of all good grace. But it is only Shaitan and his allies that scares you. Do not fear them, but fear me, if indeed you believe. Let not those who race into unbelief cause you any harm. These people can never harm Allah at all. Allah does not intend or will to assign them to any goodness in the hereafter, and they have a terrible punishment to come. those who have taken unbelief in place of faith, they will never harm Allah ever, and they shall have a severe punishment indeed. Do not think that those who are unbelievers, that they shall have any good for them or any respite. We only give them a period of time so that they may commit more and more sins, and they will have a humiliating punishment to come for them. It is not for Allah to leave the believers in a terrible plight and situation, unless He has first sifted the pure from the impure, the filthy from the wholesome. And it is not for Allah to put you all in the knowledge of the unseen. No, Allah chooses to divulge this knowledge to His messengers, whomever He may will. So, believe in Allah and in His messengers. And if you believe and follow the way of righteousness and goodness, then you shall have a great recompense in store and a reward to come for you. And let not those who show themselves to be miserly with regard to what Allah has given them of His bounty and grace ever think for a moment that this miserliness is good for them. Indeed, their state of stinginess is worse for them. Indeed, the wealth that they have shall soon be brought as a twisted collar around their necks on the day of resurrection. And Allah possesses all that's in the skies and the earth, and He is aware of all that you do. Surah Al Imran, the 3rd surah, Ayat 174 to 180. So when Allah has said to us in this ayah that Allah returned them back with a favor from Him, this means that they came back from whatever trials they had endured with the favor of Allah. The favor of Allah being referred to is three things. One, it is the reward from Him, as mentioned by Mujahid. Secondly, it is the pardon of Allah that He has given the believers, as mentioned by As-Sudai. Thirdly, it is the Iman and the help from Allah. Now, when Allah mentioned this in this ayah that He has a fadl, this bounty is referring to the following things. One of the bounties that Allah has is the bounty of success in one's commerce, as mentioned by Mujahid and As-Sudai. This is also the statement of those who explained that the believers went out to take hold of the commerce that Abu Sufyan had looted. Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri radiallahu anhu has said, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent the Muslims out to the appointed time to meet Abu Sufyan at the place of Badr, they went out with their items with them. And they said, indeed, we've met Abu Sufyan. He's the one who we went out to him. And we came out to him with our properties. And at Badr, there was much to be gained, and there is much in every year. So the people came back, and they fulfilled their needs. But Abu Sufyan, at the place where he promised to trade with these people, broke his promise. And this is referred to in more than one place. Secondly, the believers were tested by drought and difficulties, and they received the sustenance irrespective of that. And they also received, number 3, the reward from Allah. Now, when it's mentioned by Allah that it did not touch them any evil, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, meaning none of them were annoyed by the tribulations that came to them, they knew that they would come. And they followed the pleasure of Allah in seeking the people. And Allah had defended and pushed the believers, so much so that the idol worshippers were kept away from the believers and they were protected. And Shaitan, he only seeks to put fear into you, and fear is one of the actions that Shaitan does by planting hypothetical questions in the heart of those who fear. So he tries to make you afraid of his allies as well. And he tries to make you afraid of those he has control over. But the Exalted One said, don't fear them and fear me. So remain upon taqwa and do not fear them. Do not show weakness towards them. Now, as Shaitan causes the hypocrites to feel fear of his allies, so that they sit down and avoid fighting the idol worshippers, as mentioned by Al-Hasan al-Basri and As-Sudai and Az-Zujaj. And when the Exalted One says, so do not fear them, meaning don't fear the allies of Shaitan, but fear me if you leave the commands that I gave you. And remember that which has been revealed. Now, the rest of this statement regarding the fear, it says, and do not fear them, fear me if you are believers. The expression if here is actually referring to two things. If here means when you are believers, as said by Ibn Abbas and Muqatil. So fear me while you are believers. And then number two, it is a conditional statement. That means that you wouldn't fear Shaitan and his allies if you were believers. For you will fear me. And when the Exalted One says, don't let it grieve you, those who race into kufr. Nafi' recites it, yuhzinka, or liyuhzinnani, or wal-yuhzin. And all of this is valid, and it is in the book of Allah. Now the rest of the reciters recited as you will have already heard before. Now, those who race into kufr are of four types. The first group is referring to the munafiqun, the hypocrites, and the leaders of the Jews, as mentioned by Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu. Secondly, it's referring to the hypocrites as an independent group, as said by Mujahid. Thirdly, it is referring to the unbelievers of Quraysh, as stated by Ad-Dahhak. Fourthly, those referred to are the apostates who've left Islam, as said by Al-Mawardi. So all of these categories You should not allow them to grieve you. Now, the statement racing into kufr here, it is referring to their manifesting their kufr and allying themselves with the unbelievers and seeking their help. Now, someone may ask the question, how is it that someone can see this, people racing into kufr, and not be grieved by what they saw? The answer to this question is, the ayah here, Allah is telling you, don't let their action grieve you, for you will receive help against these people. And when the Exalted One says that they will never harm Allah at all, it's referring to two things. By their kufr, they will never decrease anything in the kingdom of Allah, as stated by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu and Muqatil. Secondly, they will never harm the awliya of Allah at all, as said by Ata. And the statement in this ayah that Allah wants that He should not give them any hadh. The hadh or portion here means a piece of something. And the akhirah is referring in this particular passage, the akhirah here means the paradise. That they won't have any portion or piece in the paradise. And they will have a severe punishment, meaning in the fire. And the Exalted One says, those that purchase unbelief at the cost of faith. Mujahid says, the hypocrites, they believed, then they rejected faith. We've already discussed in this ayah what is meant by the word to purchase something. You can refer back to Surah Al-Baqarah for the full discussion on the introduction of the hypocrites and such. You should already be familiar with this. Do not think that those who disbelieve have had respite shown to them because of the good for themselves. Now, this ayah was revealed because of a number of incidents. Firstly, it is referring to the Jews, Christians, and hypocrites, as mentioned by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Secondly, it's referring to the Bani Qurayza and Banu Nadir, two of the three major Jewish tribes, as said by Ata. Thirdly, it is referring to the idol worshippers of Mecca, as mentioned by Muqatil. And in a general sense, it can be used to refer to every unbeliever. As discussed by Abu Sulaiman al-Dimashqi.